Okie dokie. Please don't explode. Afternoon. Oh, the sweet golden nectar of Lucasade. Afternoon, everybody. Right, so a lot has been happening. There's a lot to discuss. I want to start, obviously, with the news that's broken overnight of the Arizona relocation and the players now being informed of. Actually, before we go any further, housekeeping rules. Obviously, you've got to be subscribed to leave a comment in the comment section. That just makes life easier for the moderators, easier for me, keeps the trolls and the spammers off the channel, and just keeps the chat flowing a lot nicer. That's housekeeping done. Lots to talk about. The Arizona Coyotes relocation saga. This is accelerated very, very quickly. A week ago, we had the leaked renderings. We had, earlier this week, we had the leaked renderings. We had announcements about bidding for this parcel of land in the Scottsdale area. And then as soon as the leaked renderings came out, basically it's gone downhill from there. The mayor of Scottsdale in the Phoenix area has basically said, I'm not going to support the team in their endeavor. I think Maruello has lost any good faith he had with the fan base. He promised much, delivered very little. The league's got to take some responsibility. Players have now been informed they will be touring the facility in Salt Lake City on the 18th. So by this time next week, the Coyotes may completely cease to exist. Most fans on social media have already accepted the team's fate. But this has really gained traction very, very quickly in the last week or so. The situation has drastically changed very, very, very quickly and has gone from we have a plan to we're moving the team. I think this move was on the cards when the Tempe deal fell through last year. I honestly believe that things have been in the pipeline behind the scenes for some time, and it's all come to a head very, very publicly and very, very quickly. But there's a lot of similarities with the Atlanta Thrashers in 2011. A lot of similarities. Arena issues, bad ownership, and the league making a lot of mistakes as well. I do feel sorry for the fans and the workers of the team who are going to lose their jobs. But a lot of fans have gone online and said they're going to tune out the NHL. They feel let down by the league. And a lot of fans don't want Maruello to have an expansion franchise should the league return to Arizona, should the land auction be successful. Maybe they pull out the land auction, we don't know. Major League Baseball has been facing a lot of scandals this season. Obviously, we've had the jersey situation with Fanatics. We've also had the Ohtani betting scandal that involves his translator, Ipe. It turns out his translator stole about $16 million of Ohtani's funds. Now, Ohtani is the most expensive athlete in the world. He has just signed in the offseason the biggest pro contract in sports ever. He's on stupid money, even though there's some money deferred. It's the biggest contract in sports history. This betting scandal has really caught the league, Major League Baseball, literally unprepared. And I was watching a video on another channel, Brody Brazil. He's a broadcaster, has his own YouTube channel as well, and he was talking about this. And I basically left a comment saying that over here in the UK and in Europe, we've had multiple high-profile players, mostly in European football, but in other sports as well, and in Australia with the rugby league, with a player who was done for a betting scandal. We've had it in cricket. The North American pro leagues are woefully underprepared and under-equipped to deal with this kind of situation. Yes, we've seen Shane Pinto for the Ottawa Senators get a 41-game suspension for betting breaches, but I honestly believe that the major leagues in North America are woefully unprepared with the fact that the legalization and regulation of sports gambling and betting in general is now more widespread across the US. It's fully legalized now. It's up to each individual state to enact the legislation. Woefully unprepared. The fact that they've got so much betting sponsorship with teams as well. And then, in Shane Pinto's case, the irony is the Ottawa Senators are sponsored by a betting company. He gets done for breaching betting rules. The irony of that. So the Major League Baseball betting scandal. I think the league is more relieved that it was the interpreter, Ipe, Shohei Ohtani's interpreter because he doesn't speak very good English because he's Japanese. But we don't know what sports were bet on, and we don't know if it involves other major leagues or Major League Baseball. From what we can gather, there is no evidence at this time that he was betting on Major League Baseball games or even minor league baseball games, but it does raise the question of the integrity of all the major leagues, not just in North America, but around the world. $16 million over 2 years is ridiculous. The NBA's got similar issues with fans courtside abusing players and coaches and threatening players and coaches when their bets don't come in. Same situation. I honestly believe the major leagues in North America and the authorities in North America are woefully under-equipped and underprepared and for the issues they are going to face. It's going to become more commonplace that you have more betting scandals. I have no doubt. Yesterday, disorder at Aintree in the Grand National meeting on Ladies' Day. This is becoming a common theme with horse racing. There was some violent disorder. There's also planned protests by animal rights and other activists and other political protests outside the race course. The last couple of years, protesters have tried to get on the track. Considering the heightened police presence, they'll be pretty stupid to try that. And considering the tension in the crowd anyway from yesterday and bubbling tensions in the city of Liverpool, I think that'd be a pretty stupid thing to piss off 150,000 drunk Scousers. That will not end well. With a fair few Irish there, it will not end well, I can assure you that. But there was disorder yesterday. It did make big headlines. There's been a lot of commentary about disorder at horse racing tracks. We've seen it at Royal Ascot. We've seen it at the Cheltenham Festival. We've seen it at the Derby meeting, the major meeting at York. We've seen this at several racetracks in recent years. A friend of mine was working at Royal Ascot one year and was caught up in the disorder. He made the press because he grabbed two lads and, well, he was working there, split them up. They still wanted to swing, so he knocked them both out. Well done, Basher. My mate's nickname is Basher, and he's a big bloke, and he basically grabbed them both. They continued to want to swing, so he basically gave them a bit of a slap and handed them over to the police, and he did make the 6 o'clock evening news a few years ago. But no, the Aintree disorder is something that keeps recurring. This is not a one-off. This has happened in a few recent years as well at Aintree at the Grand National meeting and at their winter meeting as well. This is something that has occurred on a regular, frequent basis in recent years. I discussed channel growth last night in the channel update video I did. I'm just going to cover it again. The growth's been really, really good. It has slowed, obviously, in recent weeks with me not being 100%, with me being unwell. I can't help that. Although the weather is quite nice today, so I might, after the live stream, go for a little walk down to the local nature reserve and back, just to get some air in the lungs. I'm not going to stay on here too long. The weather's I might have a nice afternoon walk in a few hours' time. But yeah, the channel growth's been pretty good. It's been pretty solid across the board. A lot of growth from Australia, which has been really, really good. The US viewership's picked up as well. Especially in recent days, viewership has picked up in the US, which is fantastic, and growth in the UK is still there. And we're now getting views from in Europe again. Switzerland's shown a fair bit of growth, but I think it might be down to the football club history videos that I've just done. But growth in Switzerland hasn't been seen before. Suddenly, Swiss viewers are watching. I've been watching the NRL this morning. South Sydney have lost again, although they did show a lot more fight in this game than in previous defeats. They showed a bit more fight in the second half. They led briefly in the first half, but Cronulla had a bit too much for them, even though Cronulla were a bit short-handed in the forward pack because of injuries. Is that Jason Demetriou now sacked? Is that his last game? What the reports we've been hearing out of the Bunnies is that he's most likely gone before their bye round is over, before their rest week is over. This could be his last game. We'll see what reports say on Monday and Tuesday. It might be quicker than that. It could be as soon as tomorrow. We might get a press release. But I'm assuming at some point next week we get a press release from the South Sea Rabbitohs about the coaching situation. But I think Jason Demetriou is gone. They've only won one match this season out of 6. Bottom of the ladder. It's an untenable position. Yes, they get the bye next week, so they get 2 points for the bye. But I think that is him done at South Sydney. It's been a very unhappy, I'm going to say 10 months there. So those are the main things that I want to talk about. Obviously, the Grand National's taking place in a few hours. That obviously is going to bring its own pros and cons. I understand the various activists who want to protest around the race course. There are designated protest areas, but we know there's going to be someone dumb enough to try and get on the racetrack, and then you're going to have to be pretty stupid to piss off that many drunk Scousers and Irish, I tell you, because you will not be getting out of there in one piece if you ruin their day, I tell you. But yesterday they ruined their own day. As I was saying, the football club history videos I've been doing, good response, really good response for them. As you know, the spring turns into summer, we'll be doing more football club histories. I'm just going to give it a little break for now. I think I've done enough to keep you guys busy watching that little playlist for a little while. I think I'll do a few more in the evenings next week, and then as the spring turns into summer and the European season ends, I think that I can really delve into a lot more clubs across the leagues across Europe. I might do some more French clubs. There's some really interesting French clubs to look at, so that's something we can look forward to. But the response to the Swiss club videos has been really, really good. I wasn't expecting to get like massive views, but there's been a good response, and we've had views from Switzerland, and the Malmo video did quite well as well. We've had views from Sweden as well, so that's always fun to see, and it's refreshing to see that people outside the UK and the Commonwealth are actually watching the content. The main topics we've covered so far is the Arizona Coyotes relocation situation, and is it confirmed yet, or is it 95% there? I think it's confirmed, but an official announcement will be coming in the coming days. Major League Baseball and the NBA having their betting issues. The Major League Baseball betting scandal, I want to cover this in a bit more detail, because as I say, over here in the UK, we've seen several high-profile players over the years get suspensions for breaching betting rules. Daniel Sturridge comes to mind, Ivan Tonali, the Newcastle United midfielder. He's only played a handful of games this season. This dates back to his time in Italy with some of his former Juventus teammates. And famously, Joey Barton. People forget about Joey Barton's betting breaches when he was, I believe, up in Rangers. 1,800 odd betting breaches. He got an 18-month ban, which basically led to him retiring from the game. Joey Barton, what a lovely non-controversial figure he is. Joey Barton got a lengthy suspension. I think that's the longest betting suspension, but we could go back to Paolo Rossi when he was before the 1982 World Cup and the bribery and betting scandal in Italy in the late 70s, early 80s that went to court, and there was a suspended prison sentence, and people actually got charged with fraud offences and corruption offences. So I think the North Americans are, as I say, the pro leagues in North America, the authorities in North America are really, really underprepared for what is coming their way. And what we've seen is, okay, Ohtani may be a bit naive, maybe, obviously not English not being his first language, and a country that isn't his homeland because he's from Japan, and different cultures in regards to Japan and the US in regards to what gambling is, and is it allowed or not, and is it socially acceptable, and all this kind of stuff. $16 million though, that is a significant amount of money. As I say, the integrity of not just Major League Baseball but any professional sport, I think, is now brought into question. We have to find out what his former translator Ipe, what sports and leagues he was betting on, and if there were any suspicious betting patterns at the time, because we do know that there's been some suspicious betting patterns with NBA games this season. There's a couple of games that are under the spotlight for suspicious betting patterns. So Major League Baseball and the NBA, these issues coming out roughly at the same time. And with Pinto, the Ottawa Senators player in the NHL, getting a 41-game suspension. We've got to wait for now is the NFL and Major League Soccer to have a betting scandal, and then we've got the clean sweep of the 5 major leagues in North America. These are concerning issues that I think are not being dealt with very well by the leagues in North America, considering they get a lot of money from gambling companies and betting companies sponsorship and partnership. And what I then find very, very interesting is some of these other high-profile sports YouTubers are sponsored by betting companies, and they're talking about these betting scandals and allegations. Yet the irony is, BetMGM or Ladbrokes or PointsBet or whatever the betting company is, and it's on a ticker tape. So I was watching Foul Territory last night, watched one of their videos, and at the bottom of the screen is BetMGM, yet they're talking about the Major League Baseball betting scandal. You could not make the irony of that up, that they're earning revenue from a channel sponsor, which is a betting firm, yet they're discussing illegal gambling and potential match fixing and theft, but involving Major League Baseball. You could not make the irony up. You could not make the irony of that up. I mean, that to me is it just makes me completely just shake my head. It really does. But you couldn't make it up. I mean, but I do think that the US is sadly very far behind Europe and the rest of the world in regards to, having rigid structures in place and the experience as well. They've opened up a can of worms with this. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how they unpick the situation. I think is the best way to describe it. It's we'll see what happens with the Otani and the federal investigation. We know there's court documents and a press release has been released. Major League Baseball is looking a bit red faced, in my opinion. I think they have been woefully unprepared. In my opinion, for what's going on. Right, so Newcastle are 2-0 up against Spurs. It was half time. It's 47 minutes into the game, so they're just into the second half. Ishak and Gordon have scored the goals 2 minutes apart on 30 and 32 minutes. Spurs are on the back foot. 4 games kick off at 3 o'clock. Brentford, Sheffield United, Burnley, Brighton, Man City, Luton, and Forest, Wolves. I mean, if Luton can nick a cheeky away draw or something, Forest need to beat Wolves, and then Bournemouth Man United is a 5:30 kickoff. But Newcastle are 2-0 up against Spurs at home. So that is very, very interesting. Right after, let's have a look at the championship table. So yeah, Newcastle. Oh dear. We'll do all right. Wow, Rotherham up by 20 points. I know Rotherham been relegated, but they're 20 points below the relegation line. That is ridiculous. But Birmingham, Sheffield Wednesday, and Huddersfield, they're battling over survival. Stoke aren't necessarily safe. Neither are Millwall or Blackburn, nor QPR or Plymouth. Although Plymouth beat Leicester last night, a shock win. The top 3 are all equal on points in the Championship. Leeds are top, Leicester are second, Ipswich are third. It's getting very tasty at the top of the Championship table. So there's that. So the relegation battle in the Championship and the promotion battle in the Championship is getting quite tasty. We know that Leicester, if they get promoted to the Premier League this season, will be facing a similar punishment to what Everton and Nottingham Forest have had with their points deductions. And the same with Sheffield United. If they don't stay up and if they do get relegated, they're having a points deduction as well in the Championship. So we've discussed this a lot in regards to the governing body, the leagues trying to basically clean house before the regulator comes in. I think some of these punishments are all over the place. Sheffield United, basically, this is an ongoing issue from last season where they had a transfer embargo. They had some late payments on transfer fees. So I believe the transfer rules have actually changed in that regard, where you're limited in the amount of payments you have to make over the whole football transfer. But they were late with payments over a transfer or two last season. They got hit with a transfer embargo. They've now got a further punishment from the Football League. So if Sheffield United stay in the Premier League, they don't get a points deduction. However, they're looking very likely to get relegated, so they'll be starting next season in the Championship, should they play in the Championship, with, I think, is it a 2 or 4 point deduction with half their penalty not applied, so they could get a further points deduction. So there's a lot going on. We've had statements from the Nottingham Forest manager Nuno about the points deductions and how it's completely changed the dynamic of the relegation fight at the bottom of the Premier League table. So there's ongoing issues there. Tony Smith, that's the other story. Tony Smith has left Hull FC in the Super League by mutual consent. So Tony Smith was announced as having left Hull FC. It's been a very poor start to the season. Tex Hoy is one of 2 players that have been released with immediate effect. He went on social media to heavily criticise the organisation and Tony Smith in particular in regards to the culture at the club and the direction the club was taking, the lack of focus, the lack of quality. So Hull FC have basically got rid of the coach and they got rid of Fasumali Brown, I believe, is the other player, and Tex Hoy. Now, Tex Hoy signed a 2-year deal. He aimed to return back to the Newcastle Knights in the NRL. He's been released effective immediately to find another club. So that's quite interesting considering the salary cap situation that a lot of clubs in the NRL find themselves in. But the plan was he would play for 2 years in the Super League. This is his second year of that contract, and then return back to the Newcastle Knights next season. So they may get him back early. I don't know. There are some injury concerns at several clubs with the fullback position, and Tex Hoy is a fullback, so we may see him back in the NRL sooner rather than later. Well, Yeovil Town. Truro City. I've looked at. There was a post on Facebook the other day in regards to Truro City's remaining fixture list and how many games they had to play before the end of the season. Obviously, right now, as I look out of my apartment window, it's lovely mid-spring. It feels like summer day outside. It's beautiful weather, but we've had a lot of rain and a bit of snow at higher ground. We've had a really wet, really heavy rain, wet winter. We've basically had a wet 10 months. The last 10 months or so, 9.5 months, have been just constant rain with only a handful of weeks where they've had more dry days than wet days. And the weather's looking quite nice now, but 2-3 days ago there was a storm coming up, the south coast. There was flooding in Sussex. I believe there was flooding in other parts of the south and west coast of the UK and Ireland over the beginning of the week. The weather right now, it is quite nice, but further north there's snow on the mountains, there's bad weather, and so then we've got like a north-south, east-west kind of divide, and that's impacted like non-league clubs like Truro City. You've had to play like 8 games in like 12 days or something. I'm not surprised Yeovil have got promotion and beaten Truro City, but Truro City probably run out of players who are fit at this point. I think the FA, as the overall governing body, and the various leagues from the Premier League downwards, need to look at, potentially if weather is impacting the playability of a playing surface, that they find a neutral venue that can accommodate the game, and a compensation scheme for fans. I know Dundee have faced a bit of criticism for their playing surface in the SPL. They've had multiple games postponed this season. Rangers threw their toys out the pram in regards to Dundee and the playing surface up on the east coast of Scotland. But as I say, the amount of rain and snow in some areas that we've had, and the fact that the water just cannot drain away. The groundwater levels are really, really high. And so I'll have to look a bit more into the Dundee situation, but I believe they're facing a fine from the Scottish FA over the fact they've had so many games postponed, but the playing surface is unplayable up there. The water is just not draining away, and Scotland's had far more rain than parts of England. They've had more snow than parts of England. They've had some very cold temperatures this winter at times, and some very bad weather. But I do think the FA and the various leagues, from the Premier League down through the non-league structure, at the same in Scotland, they need to come up with, if there's constant postponements because of the weather, let's find a neutral ground for the fixture to take place, with or without fans. If it's a quick-term fix, a short-term, literally last-minute decision, refund them. Give the fans a refund fund which the leagues make enough money. There could be some money set aside to refund fans their match day tickets, some kind of redress scheme, so games can get played. So we don't have a situation like Truro City in the National League South play. I think it was like 8 games in like 11 days or something, which is just player welfare. Come on. There has to be a player welfare aspect. I understand that they need to end the season by a certain date and get that done. But come on, we need to have some common sense applying here. Some of these rules that the various leagues and the FAs have in place are really archaic. But yeah, questions do have to be asked, obviously, about Dundee, for example, and their playing surface. So, there's that. Potters Bar Town FC, who play in the Isthmian Premier Division, announced last week they're going to install 3G by the end of the year. So the start of next season, they're going to play a lot of away game. Yeah, well, in the short term, it's obviously an investment, but in the long term, it means at the lower league level, where money is very, very tight and they are heavily reliant on gate receipts, less games are postponed because of the weather. A lot of non-league clubs are doing this while they're in the non-league. So hypothetically, let's say Truro or Yeovil in this case, let's say they decide we're going to go for a plastic pitch for next season. Let's install it. And then they get promoted back to the Football League. They're going to have to replace that plastic pitch for the Football League season. Just rules. But I understand the reasonings why non-league clubs, especially those with not very wealthy owners, or a lack of funds and smaller fan bases, are heavily now relying on 3 or 4G pitch. I'm not a massive fan of them, personally, because the injuries there seems to be a lot of I'm going to call them stress injuries on the knees and stuff. No, I didn't watch any of the European games this week. I did hear, obviously, at Atalanta beating Liverpool 3-0 is the result of all the European games. I think that deserves the most discussion. I think Liverpool, is their focus now on the Premier League? Are they going to put their focus into the Premier League? I can actually believe Atalanta have done that. They've made a Champions League semi-final only a couple of years ago. They're a very, very good side. I think they go under the radar because they're Atalanta and it's not Inter or AC Milan or Napoli or one of the more successful Italian clubs. I can believe that score. I can. I think Liverpool's injury issues, I think, are catching up with them. It doesn't surprise me personally. Just going to put the notebook down for a bit until I come up with some more discussion points for the stream. But no, I can believe that. I can definitely believe that. Nothing is certain. Yes, on paper, and if you look at where the clubs are at in their respective seasons, and the fact Liverpool have already won a trophy this season, and Atalanta haven't won a trophy for some time, I can believe that. I wouldn't be surprised if Atalanta go on and win the whole thing now, which I think would be great for Atalanta. I think they're a largely, I wouldn't say unknown club, but they're sort of everyone's second favourite Italian team. So you have your favourite Italian club, and you are like Atalanta because they really are a community club. I like Atalanta. They're my favourite Italian team. I want to see them do well. No, they won't. They won't put 3 past Atalanta in Bergamo. That's just not going to happen. There's no way they're going to put 3 past Atalanta away from home in Bergamo in an intense atmosphere in Italy where Atalanta won't score a goal. Atalanta have proven we've got them. We know how to beat them defensively. We know how to beat them in attack. They got the tactics right. They got their lineup right. That's no shock to me, though. People say that's a shocking result. That shouldn't have happened. Atalanta, nearly made a Champions League final and narrowly missed out on making the Champions League final. They've got some really good players. Ironically, their style of football is actually surprisingly similar to Jurgen Klopp with how they press and their formations they use. Very similar style of play. They just got their lineup right and their tactics right, because you're going to have to assume Atalanta don't score and Liverpool score 3 or 4. Yeah, Liverpool have done it. Like they've shown time and time again in cup competitions that they can pull off, fairy tale stories. Obviously, Istanbul 2005, but I think also that loss against Man United in the FA Cup, where they could have and should have won that game. That was an epic seesaw game. But they've lost at home, and I think Atalanta will be like, well, they've got to come to our place now, and Atalanta are no easy out at home. They're not a bad side. They're really not a bad side. Not by a long shot. That's going to be a really tough ask at a time when they're trying to win three. Well, they were in line for 4. Now they're in line for 3 trophies this season. But I think they want to send Klopp out with a Premier League trophy. I think that would mean more. Yes, the Europa League is still a nice trophy to have, but I think they want to go out with the league title. But we'll see if Luton can do them a favour today by snatching something away at Man City, which is plausible because Luton are fighting for their lives. They need to get points. Honestly, I don't know. And personally, I know it sounds stupid as a sports channel. I have no interest in the Premier League. My club's in the Championship trying to avoid relegation. I'm more interested in what's happening at the bottom end of the Championship. Personally, I have no horse in the race. I think it would be a good thing if Klopp leaves on a high, that'd be a nice fairy tale ending for that club. But I think it will be better for the league if Arsenal win. Personally, I think it'd be better for the league if Arsenal win. I think while Arsenal have won many Premier Leagues, I think it would be better for the league as a whole to say, hang on a second, this is not just Man City's league with occasionally Liverpool challenging. This is a more competitive league than it has been for a while. But Man City obviously have those ongoing charges against them. And the Premier League needs to pull their finger out and actually show some backbone here, because the fans are very, very quickly losing trust in the Premier League board and the governance of the sport quicker than they lost trust with FIFA in 2015. I really do think that this independent regulator needs to come in quick, and the Premier League needs to pull their finger out, and they wipe up the reputational damage. They've already damaged their reputation by the weak governance for the previous 30 years. So they can't cherry pick little punishments for clubs. They've got to actually enforce their rules properly. I wouldn't say the Championship is the hardest league in the world. I think it's a league that has really bad economics. A lot of Championship clubs, Christ, if we're properly going to talk about enforcing rules, and I read an article somewhere a year or two ago, just not long after the European Super League, I thought I'll do a little bit of digging on these financial fair play and these new financial sustainability profit loss rules they're going to bring in. 70% of the Football League and Premier League clubs, so that's 92 clubs at that particular moment, 70% of them, plus a handful of clubs obviously in the National League who were former Football League clubs. So we're looking at about, I'll say 100 clubs here. Around 70-75% should have had some form of punishment for breaching financial rules. And so the Football League, Premier League and National League, that would look really bad if, 7 out of 10 clubs, let's say, you're punishing. It just looks like an absolute, well, what have you been doing governance-wise for, all that time? So, yeah, you can say that, but then if you do get relegated, it's not you're not guaranteed to get back up. Ipswich, I think, are the surprise for me this season. They were a League One club last year. It'd be nice to see Ipswich back in the Premier League. I think it'd be nice to see Premier League football back in East Anglia at Portman Road. And they've obviously got history in Europe as well. Ipswich are a very historical club. The old Tractor Boys, it would be great to see them back in the top flight. But we'll see what happens. There's still games to play. The top 3 are all equal on points. Leicester have won the most games. Leeds have the better goal difference. Ipswich, I think, have drawn more games than Leeds. It's coming down to potentially, and I say potentially, tiebreakers for those 3 clubs. If it could come down to tiebreakers, and I think for and against with the 3 clubs has come into play as well. So that is really interesting. And of course, Plymouth did Leeds a favour by beating Leicester last night. So it's getting really interesting now, both ends of the Championship. Obviously, Rotherham are the first club officially relegated from any league. We'll see some more relegations and promotions in coming days. I know Yeovil, obviously, my cousin's team and my uncle's team have obviously got promotion back to the National Leagues. Their road back to the Football League has been an up and down one, but it'd be nice to see Yeovil back in the Football League. I mean, it was not that long ago they were a Championship club, but it just shows how quickly everything can change. a lot of clubs dropped. I mean, Birmingham, what a mess. I mean, the whole Wayne Rooney appointment, that really went well. And they've just not recovered. But that's, again, ownership decisions. A lot of really, this is the American money argument. Do they actually get our sporting culture? And I think more and more fans, sports fans in the US, Canada, I think, are a little bit more worldly than people give them credit for. But in the US, are actually respecting and understanding the European sporting culture with the history and the community club dynamic rather than the franchise dynamic. So there's that. What good players, bad manager is a curse that often comes true. You might have a good manager and bad players, but I do think culture starts at the top, and that's in the boardroom. That's with ownership. That's my opinion. Culture starts in the back room. We're talking ownership. We're talking boardroom. We're talking backroom staff. I think culture starts at the top of an organisation and filters down, not the bottom filtering up. That's my opinion. That's what I've seen. If you've got a bad management culture and if you've got you allow bad habits to form, it plays out in at the end of the day. But that's my opinion on something from work. I've worked for some bad companies, let's just say that, and a lot of the issues were in management. And when I say management, not at the coalface. We're not talking operational management. We're talking ownership, boardroom, and sales, and right at the top, the bosses. It filters down. Yeah, a lot of the time being a superstar player, but then you look at Xabi Alonso by Leverkusen, I think he bucks the trend a little bit there. Guardiola, I think, for me, if Guardiola was to have limited budget and not have inherited a good team, that would be interesting to see how Guardiola would actually do when he's got to build a team from scratch with academy players and work with the players he's got on a limited budget. That would be the true test of Guardiola, in my opinion. Having no money to spend, having to work with what he's got and the academy products, that would be really interesting. Look, we've got the Venkis in charge. I remember once they tried to get Ronaldinho, and Ronaldinho was like, "No, I'm going to retire." We did get Nuno Gomes at one point. Yes, we had that guy who played for Portugal, who knocked us out of Euro 2000. We did have Nuno Gomes for a couple of seasons. And we had Roque Santa Cruz, who seemed to be injured for 6 months with a bit of a calf injury, which basically he was kicking stones and he wanted a Bosman ruling transfer, which was quite funny. But this is a club that had two guys, so we occasionally get a couple of gems. But no, we did have Nuno Gomes and we had Roque Santa Cruz, the biggest waste of money I've ever seen in my life. The second time round. First time round, he was all right. Second time round, he was like, I've got a calf strain. You've had a calf strain for 6 months. Because he wasn't sold in the January transfer window, so he basically didn't play for 6 months. And they just came up with, I've got a calf strain. It was hilarious. Rui Costa, yeah, I remember Rui Costa, good player. Played in Italy for a long time, if I remember correctly. My favourite Portuguese player was Luis Figo, though. Hands down, Luis Figo. But I did like Nuno Gomes. As a cheeky sniper in the box. I've done a video on Figo. It's on the channel. I've done a video on Figo. He did not win as many trophies as you think. He did not win as many trophies as you think, did Luis Figo. But I do remember the pig's head and the mobile phone incident when he swapped. Was he playing for Barcelona or Real Madrid first? He transferred between. What manager? Brian Gunn. Brian Gunn, former Norwich City player, became their manager and got sacked after 7 games. There you go. Brian Gunn of Norwich City, player and manager. And the Wimbledon manager, the ex-Wimbledon goalkeeper from the Crazy Gang era who won the FA Cup in '88, he became a manager as well, if I remember. And I believe he actually managed Wimbledon at one point. Euro 2004? I remember Manish's goal, Manish for Portugal against the Dutch. And the Braga Stadium, where they just played it in a quarry and built 2 stands, which is a fantastic stadium. I've done a video on Braga on the Football Club History series of videos. And their stadium is just fantastic. It's unique. It's a 2-standard stadium that was built in the side of a mountain. It was an old quarry, I think it was a limestone quarry or granite quarry. And they've just built 2 stands and in an old, where they quarried the stone, got a straight edge, and then there's a cliff down to the town of Braga below. They just built a stadium in a disused quarry, which is fantastic. But yeah, Euro 2004. That was 20 years ago. That was Latvia's first and only international tournament, and a certain Marian Pahars finally made an international tournament. Fantastic player for Southampton back in the day. I've had the pleasure of watching Marian Pahars play many times. Injuries hampered his career. Might have to do a video on Marian Pahars. A fantastic little player. Cruelly injuries disrupted his career, but Marian Pahars was a brilliant player. A little maestro when he was fit. But yeah, Euro 2004 was a fantastic tournament. Dave Basson. There you go. Basson and Brian Gunn. That's two goalkeepers who were managers in my lifetime. And Brian Gunn lasted 7 games at Norwich City before they sacked him. Oh, look, I remember when we lost to Romania in Euro 2000 when Nigel Martin was in goal, we were 2-0 up. And I remember us losing to Portugal in that same tournament, and Nuno Gomes being a right pain in the arse. But no, Rui Costa was a brilliant player, brilliant player. Vastly underrated in my opinion. He did spend a lot of time in Italy, as I remember. I can't remember which club. Was it Parma or was it Fiorentina? I know he played for one of the Milan clubs as well. But Rui Costa, I'm going to have to do a video on his career because he was a fantastic midfielder. Very versatile player in midfield as well. But there were some fantastic players. Portugal had a really good side for many years and didn't win anything. They had a great side and couldn't win anything. The side that wins in 2016 is nowhere near as good as the side in the 2000s. Do you think? Well, firstly, we have to assume they get relegated because if they stay in the Premier League, they will not get that points deduction. It's the same with Leicester. If Leicester don't get promoted, they don't get their points deduction either. So this is the flaw in the system between the Premier League and Football League because that's a Football League punishment. Leicester's is a Premier League punishment. So if they so basically, Leicester could stay outside the Premier League for, let's say, 5-6 years, get promoted in 5-6 years' time, and then get hit with a points deduction for previous rule breaches. Look, stranger things have happened, but in theory, they're not relegated yet. So we have to go on to the theory that they could potentially not be in the Championship next season. But the fact that it's a Football League punishment or Premier League punishment shows how broken the system is because Leicester are under investigation by the Premier League, yet they're a Championship club. If Leicester fail to get promoted, they don't get punished. If they do get promoted, they get punished like Nottingham Forest and like Everton. And this is the flaw in the system. I think that it should be the FA governing the rules. Oh, it is. It's broken as fuck. Sorry, I'm F-bombing here, but it is completely broken and not fit for purpose. That's why we need a regulator. The football cannot govern itself. Self-regulation doesn't work. We know this. Yet they're saying we can govern ourselves. Look, we're punishing clubs now. We're punishing clubs. We're investigating clubs now. Why were they not doing that for the previous years? Why suddenly have they gone from financial fair play to profit loss sustainability rules very, very quickly? Oh, yeah, there's a football regulator coming. So they changed their rules, and then they're going to change them again in a year's time. And UEFA brought in their own version of the rules we're changing to in 12 months' time because of the European Super League, because of debt. But this makes the question come up of what were the governing bodies, be it international and then national level, doing across Europe for 30 years? Where has all the money gone? Why are all these clubs in burdened with debt that they basically got Liberia's deficit in their back pocket? Phil the Greek. Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels. Good film, which is on YouTube, by the way. I'm going to attempt to get tickets for every English player game, league teacher. That's ridiculous. That's going to cost you a lot of money. That will cost you a ridiculous amount of money. I appreciate the enthusiasm. I do. I do not envy your bank balance or being your bank manager or accountant. But I envy the enthusiasm, mine. Yeah, but sports is just too expensive. I can't afford to go to sports events anymore. I really can't. I would love to can't afford it. And this is something we come back to quite regularly is the price of tickets and merchandise. There was a leak. The NHL, obviously, Fanatics is going to become the uniform manufacturer for the NHL, and they've leaked someone within the Fanatics organization has leaked their upcoming price ranges for NHL replica jerseys and authentic jerseys. There's going to be a 3-tier jersey system. So the current Fanatics made replicas, which aren't Adidas, they're keeping similar price. There's a secondary tier, a bit more expensive than the current authentic replicas we get now of Adidas, and then they're bringing the actual worn replicas, so the like for what the players wear on the ice. $600 to $800 for a full match replica, authentic, like for like what the players wear with fight strap. $800. That is ridiculous. So yeah, price of merchandise as well comes into it, and what we've seen with Major League Baseball with the whole debacle around their player uniforms and even the fan replicas that you get in store, and the frustration from players. Players are actually saying this stuff's crap. It's not as advertised. It's not very good. Their uniforms fall apart. Baseball is not really a contact sport, and their uniforms are falling apart. What the hell is going to happen with the NHL come October? You know, bit of holding, bit of grabbing in front of the goalie's crease and a sleeve comes off. I mean, I'm expecting this to happen. And Fanatics, they brought in a new, is it head of PR or something, or head of the the Fanatics have made some governance changes within the company. They've changed some of their management structure. They've been regularly criticised for their returns policy, the quality of the products, their pricing, quality control being absolutely shocking, whole range of things. So they've made some structural changes, and I think they are feeling the pressure of the fallout from previous issues that have been highlighted on social media. There's a social media page called Fanatics Sucks, and it's got more followers than Fanatics' own social media accounts. So, but people keep buying their product, and they keep buying out all these manufacturers and memorabilia, sales companies. They keep buying up the sports memorabilia market. They keep buying up manufacturing companies that manufacture pro sports gear. They're trying to get a monopoly, and it's not just in North America. It's further afield. They've got a lot of under license manufacturing for several high profile kit manufacturers here in Europe. So there is that. Well, if you can make all those games, fair play to you, but that is a lot of money, They were critical. I remember when was it when Tranmere or when it was Grimsby, one of the clubs who got promoted from the National League to League Two a couple of seasons ago. I think it might have been the Grimsby Solihull Moors game. And fans were like, the ticket price here that the National League and the FA are asking, because it was at Wembley, they were pissed. And that was a couple of years ago. This is before the inflation has gone through the roof. And I think, I have no idea what the actual prices would be because it's through Club Wembley, the playoff finals. So I couldn't tell you. But Club Wembley, as the ticket, where you go for your tickets and all that, has been regularly hammered, criticised heavily online by fans for many, many years. Regularly criticised quite vocally by fans. I think it's a fair assessment of the situation. I couldn't tell you what the prices would be though. I really couldn't, but I know Club Wembley is heavily criticised for how the price bandings and ticket allocations. It'll be interesting to see what the Challenge Cup final attendance this year will be, for example, because that's rugby league. The RFL have an agreement with the FA, a commercial agreement that lasts till 2027. They're going to review that agreement in 2025. And the Challenge Cup since 2018, and COVID notwithstanding, that one year they played the Tottenham Stadium because of Major League, or was it the NFL or Major League Baseball? Oh no, the Euros. A couple of years ago, they played at the rebuilt White Hart Lane Tottenham Stadium. Attendances at the Challenge Cup final haven't been great either. They haven't, and so the RFL are reviewing their commercial agreement with the FA. Oh no, original Lucas is banging, like it's the best. Just sponsorship deal, please. I can't remember who makes Lucas actually. Who makes? Oh, Lucozade owns Ribena. So Ribena and Lucozade are made by the same people. That's pretty cool. It actually says on the back of the bottle who put Lucozade, Ribena, and Suntory as well. So yeah, it's pretty cool that. But no, Lucozade's epic. Yeah, if you actually look on the label, it tells you who manufacture, like what is the company. So you got obviously Iron Brew is made by Bar, but Bar from Scotland, which is our biggest soft drinks manufacturer in this country. I think the Lucozade Ribena one's the second biggest. They make loads of stuff. No, a lot. You'll be surprised how much is actually made by the Pepsi Cola or PepsiCo. You'll be surprised. There's a lot more than you think made by Pepsi. But Bar, BARR, who make Iron Brew, make a lot more stuff than you realise. And I'm actually, and Robinsons, they have a fair chunk of the market as well. You'll be surprised, really surprised. But yeah, Coca-Cola do have a lot of fingers in a lot of pies. But then you got Monster. Monster's actually bigger than Red Bull. Challenge Cup final should be rotated between the Etihad, St James's Park, and Anfield. I think it should be rotated through a number of stadiums, depending on who's playing in the final, personally. But we won't find out anything until 2025, so next year. And as things are going, we're staying at Wembley until at least 2027. So, and with the attendances as they are, even playing at something like St James's Park or the Etihad, if attendances are staying and trending in the trajectory they are, well, the last year's final was ridiculous. Hardly anyone turned up. It wasn't even half full. You would still have empty seats at St James's Park and the Etihad with that attendance. So, well, I understand the likelihood is that the attendance would be higher if it was held up north. I still use that hypotheticals of, well, how even London Broncos fans want to, keep Magic Round. Why they moved Magic Round from St James's Park to Ellen Road is beyond me. This is what I don't understand what the RFL, Super League, and IMG are doing, because from what I can tell, they want to kill the sport and kill as many clubs as possible and contract the sport drastically. And I'm not surprised the NRL are considering the option of investing in Super League and the rugby league structure in this country. I'm just really not surprised at all. And the future of the World Club Challenge, possibly going to Vegas, and the future of the Challenge Cup. I mean, I'm a London Broncos fan, so we've got a hiding to nothing this season. We're going to get relegated regardless of what we do on the pitch. I mean, as I said, hypothetically, we can get to the Challenge Cup and Super League Grand Finals, still get relegated. We could finish in the top 4, top 8, still get relegated. So I've got no faith in the RFL, Super League, or IMG doing the right thing. I think the whole thing's buggered. Yeah, Pepsi used to own a lot. Pepsi used to own a hell of a lot. Coca-Cola have spun off some stuff as well, but they're not the only big companies that deal with food and beverages based in the US that have grown their market share overseas. There's loads. Fanta, for example, was the German version of Coca-Cola in World War II, and because of the Royal Navy blockade in 1939, they couldn't get the ingredients through to continue to have bottling plants making Coca-Cola. So Fanta came about as a substitute. There you go. We're going a bit off sport here, but yes, Pepsi and Coca-Cola have bottling plants all over the world. I think the nearest bottling plant to me is Uxbridge for Coca-Cola. I believe Pepsi have a bottling plant in the UK as well, but I can't be certain. They used to have bottling plants all over the place. And it will tell you on each Coca-Cola bottle, glass bottle, where it was bottled, because each Coca-Cola bottle is unique. Well, each batch is unique. So if when you go to a restaurant, and especially in Europe, but when you go to a restaurant and you ask for Coca-Cola and it comes in a glass bottle, have a little look on that bottle where the bottling plant is, because it's stamped on the bottle. Every Coca-Cola bottle, glass one, will have the bottling plant stamped on it somewhere, normally on the base. At the base of the Coca-Cola bottle, if you look on the base, it will tell you where it was manufactured. No, Coca-Cola still have Pepsi. When you look at the news, let's say especially the Middle East, Pepsi seems to be everywhere. I remember I seem to. It's Pepsi, Pepsi, Pepsi. It's an interesting one. I don't know how we've managed to get onto soft drink companies, but you've also got to think. Coke prices are so strange though. In the UK, you pay upwards of £1, but their country you buy same product for 7p. It's supply and demand and supply chain costs and transportation costs. I think we only have the one bottling plant in the UK and Ireland, which is in Uxbridge. So, and Greater London is exceptionally expensive for real estate, and that includes industrial and corporate real estate. So you've got to pay those business rates on your business property, and then of course you've got to pay higher wages in London, London waiting time. Plus, then you've got the cost of transporting your ingredients, your raw materials to manufacture, and there's a lot more running costs. If let's say if they place their bottling plant in York, because York is a big historical link with the confectionery industry, and or somewhere else like Birmingham, another place that's quite famous for its manufacturing and its confectionery, because food and drink confectionery, it would be cheaper, and there's a lot more. Because there's small little micro chocolatiers, independent little factories up in York. And there's one down the road from me, actually. Little chocolate factory, little independent. You have that expertise already there in the food and beverage industry. You've got that, it's a university city, but it's a lot cheaper than London. So it's a surprise to me that Coca-Cola haven't looked at this and gone, we'll put a plant here. There's already the expertise in the food and drink industry in the city of York. They've got a strong link with the industry historically. It's a university city. It's a cheaper city with operating costs and rents and a whole variety of things. Oh, and we don't have to pay London waiting in the wages, so we can pay our staff a little bit less to maximise our profit. I remember something from business studies at A-level. You want to rip your own staff off. Capitalism is the best way. But no, seriously, jokes aside, I mean, they might keep their wages exactly the same for the staff to get them to relocate, but it is cheaper up north. You would have a location that has a very strong link with the food and confectionery, food and drink industry, working with sugars and sweeteners and some of the raw ingredients that are exactly the same in Coca-Cola that go into making sweets, like Roundtree's fruit pastilles. A lot of similar ingredients get used, and so that would be if I was a soft drinks and a sweet manufacturer, I would go to York. Can't really go to Birmingham because they've got the Cadbury factory and they're already well established. But I would consider going to York. Quite honestly, and of course you've got those little independent chocolate and sweet manufacturers still based in York. There's quite a few smaller independents. So yeah, I've been to Bourneville. My granddad, who passed away a few years ago, was the MP of the local area. The Curly Whirly exists because of my mum, my uncle, and my aunt being the first three kids to taste the taster ones out of a selection of sweets, and they chose the Curly Whirly as their favourite back in 19. Shit, my granddad was in government at the time. He wasn't in opposition, so that would have to be 76 to 79. And they liked the Curly Whirly, so that's why the Curly Whirly was made. There you go. And I've been at Cadbury World more than once. Chocolate. Yeah, little tidbit. But yeah, I've been there. But that would be my logic. Jason Demetrio, Gonski, yeah, he's done. He's done with all the leaks coming out of the organisation at Souths. He's done. They had to win that game. They're 1-5. They had to win that game. They showed some more fight. They looked better without Latrell Mitchell in the side. Ironic, the irony of that with the young fullback who's the size of a pint glass. He looked far quicker, far more energetic, far more enthusiastic, made more meters. Had an HIA, he still made more meters, and he spent 15 minutes off the field. But no, I think Jason Demetriou's done. I think he's gone. All the statements that are coming out, all the leaks coming out of the club, all the media releases, the undermining in the media by the club. For me, he was done as soon as they started mentioning, as soon as Latrell Mitchell started acting up off the field and on the field, he was done. He'd lost the dressing room. It was clear. It was clear very early on that, yeah, especially after the Triple M radio interview that Latrell Mitchell gave, where he just basically swore the entire time. That was a sign that Jason Demetriou had lost the respect to the majority of the players in that dressing room. I think the Sam Burgess and Johnny Morris assistant coaches, their departure at the end of last season and the concerns they raised about the culture within the playing group. Warning signs were there. They weren't dealt with. He's done. But I think that the whole organisation has got a very toxic culture from the top down. And I'm not saying Russell Crowe's the problem, as in he's funding the team, but I think the board, the backroom, there's issues there. Do I think Luton survive? Potentially, yes. If so, they've shown more fight than the other two clubs. They've really got stuck in. They've pushed some of the bigger clubs close. They've beaten some of the bigger clubs. And yeah, they've just shown more fight this season and more togetherness as a group. They're playing as a team rather than, half-heartedly. They buy into what the manager wants. They are showing some fight, grit, and determination, and they're going down kicking and screaming. They're showing more willingness and more desperation to get out of trouble than the other two. Curly Wellies are strong. Forest, Burnley, and Sheffield United. Oh, I think Everton could potentially slip into that. It all depends, I think. If Forest lose to Wolves and Luton gets something against Man City, then I think Forest are done. I think that's the morale breaker. It all depends on today's games. But I think Forest are going down because every time a club has been docked points, they get relegated. So I'm surprised Everton. We just don't know. There's enough games left for a few surprises yet. But with the way it's going, I'm surprised Everton. Everton have been in this position now for several seasons. In the wrong end of the table, you have to look at ownership. You have to look at the culture. You have to look at behind the scenes of what's going on. And as I say, culture starts from the top every time. And it then, instability is a big part of the problem. Big part of the problem. I know, obviously, with what's going on at a couple of major league franchises in North America with Oakland, with the Athletics, and Arizona with the Coyotes, and in Major League Baseball and the NHL, again, really bad ownership and instability and a lack of direction and a lack of a plan. It does impact. The actual team you put out in front of the fans and the performances and the results. There's a reason why both the Oakland A's and the Arizona Coyotes don't make the postseason quite very often. There's a reason why their wage budget is significantly less than their rivals. And there's a reason why they're both getting relocated. One's going a bit quicker than the other and seems to have built a momentum of its own. The other one, there seems to be a plan, but there isn't a plan. But both the Arizona ownership and the Oakland ownership have lost the respect and any goodwill they had with the fan bases left. There's been fan boycotts, fan protests. I feel more sorry for the Arizona fans, to be honest, because this has really gone quick. But I think the Coyote situation was sealed last year, and they didn't get the Tempe arena deal done, and that vote went against them. I think there's been discussions behind the scenes on the hush hush without making anything public for about a year now. I think when Ryan Smith and the ownership group in Utah, in Salt Lake City, who own the Utah Jazz, basically came out and said, "Yeah, we want a team." They had already the league had already put contingencies in place to make that a reality. I think Maruello will not get this new arena built, even if he wants to get an expansion franchise in 5 years' time. And I think the NHL has mishandled this whole situation very, very badly since before 1996. When the original Jets moved down there, I think the NHL signs off on who they want as ownership groups, and they signed off on every single owner who took over that franchise. They had to go, okay, we'll accept this guy, we'll ratify this ownership takeover. We go to the Board of Governors. So the league itself has to take a lot of responsibility for the situation. And it doesn't help when it's been a cap dumping team for bad contracts for 18 years. 18 years they've taken dead cap money to make the salary cap floor. They've not had stable ownership. They've rarely made a profit. It's just been a sorry state of affairs for a long time. In regards to Everton avoiding relegation soon, well, there's talk about this 777 Enterprises ownership group coming in. But again, as I say, this director's test, I mean, one of the members of that consortium has got a drugs conviction in the US, so I can't see them being... If they pass them as fit and proper, then I'm done with football, because 777 partnership should not be taken over that club because, well, one of the potential investors in Everton has got a drugs conviction, a federal drugs conviction from the US government, went to prison, served time for drug smuggling. So if that gets passed, then I'm done with football, because it does show that money talks and integrity doesn't mean jack shit. But no, Everton, I have concerns that they could be playing in their new stadium in the Championship at some point. How they keep avoiding relegation is beyond me. The fact that they've had points deductions and partly overturned one of them, I just don't know. I think Nottingham Forest can say, okay, then we can. They're both appealing their current points deductions, even though they both pled guilty to their offences. So I don't know. I have concerns about how this profit and sustainability rule and the breaches of it are being enforced by the league. I have some grave concerns about how it seems to me that they are cherry picking which clubs they're going to punish. I just don't know where I stand on football governance. I don't think it's good enough. I think they're being very reactionary. I think they're panicking, but they're panicking because they've been so weak for so long and so poor in the governance model that they've had, that the clubs have been allowed to get away with too much, but they've also, the league, have allowed too many bad owners to buy football clubs and rack them with debt. So Man United's takeover now would not happen. The Glazers would not get Manchester United now. I find it funny that they brought in the director's test after Abramovich and the Glazers bought their clubs. I just find that really funny. Going, well, we can't have this anymore. I think the Glazer takeover of Man United was the turning point, because that's one of their crown jewels of football clubs. They can't have them, being punished. Man United should be punished for a lot of their financial dealings. But it's like Man City. They've been found guilty by UEFA once, got off on appeal on a technicality. That technicality doesn't exist with the Premier League, so we know that they're guilty. It's just going to be a watered down punishment. Again, that they've got they haven't got the right transfer policy. It's an American style. We'll throw money at the problem, hoping it cures the disease. That's basically the American way. Is throw money at it. Money fixes everything. Todd Boehly is a Major League Baseball owner. He owns the Dodgers. He's just one of his own players. Shohei Ohtani has just signed the biggest sports contract in history. His other team that he owns is being embroiled in a gambling betting scandal. with the player who's just Otani, who's just signed the biggest contract in pro sports history. He's willing to spend money. He's used to spending money because of the luxury tax system that's a joke in Major League Baseball. And he's running Chelsea like a baseball franchise. He's running it like the Dodgers. He's not running it like a football club. And so he's got to look at his advisors around him. He's brought his own advisors, clearly. He's got to look at the people who know European football. He's got to bring them in. I think he's got too many American-style advisors who don't know enough about the sporting culture and the differences in sporting culture. And that is having a bad impact on the team itself, because they've just gone out and gone, we'll buy everyone. We'll buy everyone. And we'll pay too much. They've paid over 70 million in the last 12 months on agents' fees alone. That is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. 70 million. That's a ridiculous amount of money. I think Newcastle, okay, they've had a down season, but they've had suspensions and injuries, and they're obeying the financial rules. That is the problem. The other clubs didn't have these financial constraints of financial fair play and profit loss. They're actually obeying the financial rules, and it shows. It shows those clubs that haven't been, and it shows what Newcastle United have been doing. Right, okay, we'll obey the rules. They've deliberately obeyed the rules. They've made it very, very clear. So it's going to be interesting to see. Look, St James's Park will sell out every week. Sorry, they've got a fanatical fan base. They'll sell out every week. I don't think sacking Eddie Howe is the solution. I think Newcastle have always shown for a very long time they can be very, very good in the transfer market, picking up bargains. But now those bargains are not bargains anymore, because a below average player goes for 70 million to bench warm. Look at Man City and Chelsea. They've signed how many players and they sit them on the bench and ruin their careers? So because of Man City and Chelsea's style of, and even Man United, and how they go about transfers and they just get an average player for 4 times too much, it's made it harder for clubs like Newcastle, who've always had very good scouts and a very good eye for hidden gems in the transfer market to do anything. I think Newcastle, will spend more money on their youth system again and invest in their youth system, keep a solid core at the club, and go through their youth system. I think that's the way they're going to have to go in the short to medium term. They've always been a production factory for talent anyway. They've always produced talent in the Northeast. Going back to the Northeast as a region, I mean, crikey, Brian Clough, he's from Northeast. So Bobby Robson, Northeast. Obviously, Alan Shearer, quite famously. Beardsley's another one. Chris Waddle. Steve Bruce. So they've always had a good talent pool in that part of the world, not just Newcastle. YA man, Baker Grove, YA man. But the whole Northeast, from Middlesbrough all the way up to Newcastle, they've always had a really great talent pool, because rugby league hasn't really made inroads in that part of the world. Rugby union, limited inroads really in more recent times, but again, limited inroads in that part of the world. And the only other professional sport of any note is Durham County Cricket Club. So they can cherry pick the athletic talent. And because football is the established sport in the Northeast, but as I say, they don't have to worry about rugby union, rugby league, cricket, ice hockey as much as other areas that are multi-sport cities and multi-sport regions. Football's become the dominant sport, and so therefore, even though rugby league does well with the Magic Weekend, and then rugby league is played there, rugby union is played in Newcastle, but because the Northeast as a whole, now I'm including the Monkey Hangers and the Smoggies in this, yes, I am. So as I say, Middlesbrough all the way up to Newcastle, they have got a dominant sport which attracts a lot of people. And so, once you've got that in place and the other sports are finding it difficult to make inroads, even though rugby league has shown a lot with the Magic weekend, which has now been taken away from Newcastle because the RFL and IMG are trying to kill rugby league, you're going to have to cherry pick and you're going to have a bigger talent pool. Whereas in places like Manchester, it's becoming more difficult because you've got the multi-sport aspect. Sheffield, the multi-sport aspects. Leeds, the multi-sport aspect. Bradford, you are going to be able to cherry pick the best talent in that part of the world. And every kid wants to play for Newcastle or Sunderland, Middlesbrough, even Hartlepool, because that's what they know. They want to play for their local club. And there's some great amateur clubs and semi-pro clubs as well, and non-league clubs that are professional, like Gateshead, for example. And so there's just they produce so much talent they can't keep it all. So yeah, how do I do it? A notebook and a pen, and also living by myself and not having a social life. Piece of piss. Doing the club history videos, for example, keeps the mind ticking over at this time of year where the major sports in Europe are winding down or just starting up their seasons, because obviously cricket season's just started. Rugby league is sort of in its early half of the season, even though traditionally it's the end of the season. But rugby union and football and ice hockey are winding down their seasons. The summer, apart from the World Championships in the ice hockey and whatever international tournaments taking place in the summer, for the most part, is pretty quiet in the sports that I watch, apart from the NRL and Challenge Cup final in rugby league. So I can devote more time to the history videos and looking at various bits and pieces. I like reading stuff. I like researching stuff. I've got a great interest. I'm not great at maths, but I've got a great interest in like stats and figures and fun facts. So for me, when I look at, let's say, which notebook's got the Lewis feet? The Muzzy Is It video I did last year. One of those notebooks over there, just where my finger is. There's a couple of notebooks there. The Muzzy Is It video and the Lewis Figo video. I was stunned by how few trophies Lewis Figo won. And I was stunned how many trophies Muzzy Is It won. Muzzy Is It won more trophies than I seem to remember him winning as a Leicester player, and Figo won less trophies than I seem to remember him winning throughout his career across Europe. So that was an interesting one. But no, I like to keep the mind active and keep adding the knowledge, because knowledge is power. No, the summer months when I do my football club history videos or player profiles, generally is pretty quiet when it comes to my favourite sports. Although, of course, I will be watching the Major League Baseball London Series games again, just partly for the channel as well, and partly because it is interesting to see how a major league from North America that's late to the party, how they're trying to grow their brand, what they're learning as a sport, considering Major League Baseball's had a lot of negative press so far this year and over the last couple of years. So there is that. But I'm always keen to learn more. I've got a lot of old annuals and books, and of course a lot of my sports programs. So I'm always keen to learn more. But yeah, it's an interesting one. It's an interesting question that you asked. It's basically a notebook and a pen and the internet and whatever publications I get my hands on, really. I think the sports that I enjoy most, I'll have more knowledge on. But, I'm happy to research and look at things. I'm learning stuff every day. Like, there are certain sports stories and history things and facts and figures that I'm surprised about, and that's even with the sports that I'm passionate about. I learn new stuff every day. So but no, Major League Baseball taking the games to London, I will watch them, and I'll watch them with a keen eye to see if they're better than last year or if they're worse than last year, and how playing it slightly earlier in the summer impacts the play. because the 2019 games were played earlier in the summer. Last year they played it later in the summer, and it was really warm. It was, mid 30s degrees, high humidity, not much breeze. They were using they wanted to use the oval originally, and then they kept delaying. They were meant to come in 2017, then 2018. They settled on 2019. They wanted to use the oval. Cricket World Cup was taking place, and so the ECB were like, "Yeah, we'd rather you didn't, dig up, our hallowed turf at the Surrey County Cricket Club. We'd rather you didn't do that. I know we'll get a lot of money if you did, but we'd rather you didn't dig up our stadium, because you'll be paying for it, not us." And so they decided on the London Stadium because it's a multi-purpose stadium with retractable seating, even though it's not necessarily the best baseball stadium. It's like it's a modern Oakland Coliseum. It doesn't actually work for baseball, but that's another thing. The Oval would have been perfect for baseball, but because you can do things with the field dimensions and they did their case studies and they wanted that as their stadium to use. So they're now using the London Stadium. Yeah, they can get more fans in, but it didn't work. When it gets really hot and humid and lack of breeze, it just becomes an oven in there. It does become an oven in there. You could see the fans were uncomfortable with the heat and humidity. You could see the players were really, really overheating. Even in the bullpen, in the dugouts, they looked very uncomfortable. And you can see the commentators were just pouring sweat. They were doing more talking about, oh, look, here's some diabetes in food, heart attack in a bun. So there's that. The Real Madrid 04, I'll have to look at the 04 squad. I'll have to do some videos on some of the players that were in the 2003, 2014. I think the Galacticos era, Figo was part of that era. And they didn't win as much as on paper as they should have. But games aren't won on paper, they're won on what you do on the field. And so there was a lot of big egos in that squad. So on paper, fantastic squad, if I remember correctly. But in practice, too many big egos, and it was a very difficult team to... You can have the team of the best players. If they all play like individuals, you've not got a team, you've got a rabble. Or you can have hard-working players that have a bit of skill to them, but they've got heart and soul, and you've got an army. Talent gets you so far. You've got to have grit, determination, and teamwork. So there you go. The Red Sox Yankees, 2019. I didn't watch those two games, I'm afraid. I wish I had, actually, but I didn't watch them in 2019. But I've done the review videos and all that, and what I want to see from Major League Baseball and where they can learn. That was back in my grandparents' house. So that's when I had the whiteboard. I still have the whiteboard. I just don't use it because this flat, I don't have enough space over here. And where the light comes through my window, my back door, it would glare off the whiteboard and then glare on the screen. So I've got to do some adjustments to the layout of the apartment. I think it's the best way to look at it. And I've got to go through all my sports memorabilia and books and non-sports stuff for the other channel. I've got to go through a lot of stuff and give it a bit of a tidy up before I can think about trying to make this into more of a YouTube set / living space, because this is my bed I'm sat on. My kitchen's over there. My kitchen's like a galley kitchen. I'll have to get basically if and when we get to membership level. I think a members video. If we do get to that point, I'll go, here's my flat. This is why I have no space. Hopefully when we reach that monetization threshold where we can have memberships, where we can have super chats and things like that, then I might go, here's the apartment tour. I'm very limited with space. I've got less space in this apartment than the old apartment that I was living in just over 4 years ago. It's a better apartment, as in it's not got raw sewage coming out of the sinks, and my floor hasn't caved in, and it's not trying to kill me, although maybe it is, I don't know. But it's better than where I lived before in the sense that it's not trying to kill me, but I'm further away from local services and local shops and public transport. So there are some downsides to living here, but there's some upsides. So there's that. I've got much better neighbours. I haven't got drug dealers as neighbours anymore, so that's fantastic. I did. They all got evicted, but I've got much better neighbours now. I get on with my neighbours on that side and that side. The neighbours upstairs, they're a young couple, they're all right. Some of the other neighbours I did get on with have unfortunately moved out, which is a bit of a shame. I got on with a lot of my neighbours. The new people who've moved in, I haven't seen them yet, haven't met them yet. It's been a bit of a changeover. Seems a lot of people only stay here for 6 months to a year and then they move out. I mean, so they're not here long term. But my neighbour to that side of the apartment, Adam, he's a Stockport County fan, by the way, and a Man United fan for his sins. So he loves his team from Manchester. He's lived here about a year and a half longer than me. It's about 6 years. My neighbour Michael next door's lived here for like 15 years. He's fantastic. He's my go-to nerd guy when it comes to talking about upcoming video games and just nerd stuff. So stuff for the other channel, basically. So occasionally we watch things on Netflix and have discussions about docuseries and podcasts, some upcoming video games. He's got an original N64 with GoldenEye, so he's got a treadmill. He has a treadmill that is hilarious, where it nearly killed me. So we have a good laugh. So I get on with my neighbours either side, which is kind of handy. I get on with the neighbours who live in the little bungalow in the communal garden. There's a communal garden. There's also a separate bungalow. I get on with them really well. So there is that, but unfortunately at the moment, that's my sofa, that's my kitchen and bathroom, and then behind me, as you can see, is all my other stuff. So that's basically a flat tour. There you go. That's literally all the space I have. I have a tiny apartment. Oh, and there's my washing. So through that door, there's my kitchen, and then through the next door, which is over there, is my bathroom. Right. Please ignore the landfill there. That was my sofa, which has got all my clothes on. And then behind me there is a stack of video games, 2 TVs. There's one TV there, one TV down there, my old laptop, a couple of headsets, loads of books, and then my old notebooks are up there. And then behind me is my crutches from my motorcycle accident. I've got more books down there, and then down there is even more stuff. So yeah, there's my apartment tour. There's the apartment in all its glory, in all of it. But yeah, I hopefully we tidy it up a little bit. I might do some videos in regards to my sports memorabilia. That'd be kind of cool. But no, in regards to the methods I use, and it's basically down to looking at a league and going, okay, let's do a video on the NBA, or let's do a video on Major League Baseball, the NFL, Major League Soccer, the NHL. And just doing your research on a particular team, their best season, their worst season, a particular player, and going from there. So that's basically it, really. There's not much else to really say, but you know, it's kind of fun. It's fun doing those videos. It really is fun. So, but let's have a look at what's happening on the ground with the Tottenham Newcastle score. I think it's 2-0 to Newcastle. Let's have a little look at what's happening in the sport quickly, and then we'll just plug my phone in on the charge. BBC News. And then I think I'm going to prep myself for the Grand National, and then go from there. But no, right, what's going on? Got the Women's Six Nations. Oh, let's have a look at what was the score. It was 4-0 to Newcastle over Spurs. Ishak got a double, Gordon got a goal, and Shah got a goal. So there's that. Yeah, Spurs I think Spurs. I don't know the Spurs. Grand National. Weather looks good. 4 o'clock, so the Grand National starts in just over an hour's time. So we'll see on that. Blackburn beat Leeds. Blackburn, hang on a second. Wait. Blackburn beat Leeds? 1-0 away? That has now completely changed the playoff picture. Blackburn beating Leeds has completely changed the playoff picture now. Drastically. Blackburn beating Leeds 1-0 has drastically changed the playoff picture. Obviously, Leicester lose last night at Plymouth. Blackburn beat Leeds 1-0. If Ipswich get a win, completely changes the playoff picture entirely. Completely changes it. Fantastic result. But no, Newcastle have beaten Spurs 4-0. Blackburn have beaten Leeds 1-0 away. And that's a crucial win. That could potentially keep us up. So while I have concerns about where my club are at and our drop-off in form since Christmas and the ownership at Ewood Park, beating Leeds away and keeping a clean sheet, considering the struggles we've had for the last 3.5, 4 months, fantastic. I'm really proud of that. I think that's us safe now. But 2 of the top 3 lost. This is Ipswich's time to take advantage and try and leapfrog the other 2. If Ipswich can get a win, changes the playoff hunt and the promotion hunt, and drastically changes what the table looks like. But the top 3 are so far ahead of everyone else. It beggars belief. It really does. Yeah, as I say, the top 3 are so far ahead in regards to like league position and points, that it's very difficult to see those clubs getting caught. In saying that, I do think that things have drastically changed now, and that I was not betting on a Blackburn win today, but we had to win and we have, so I'm happy with that. But no, it's very, very interesting looking at how Tottenham are just having these meltdowns in games where they're favourites on paper, but in practice they fail to deliver. Another trophyless season for Spurs. There's got to come a point where ownership have got to think: are we just here for the money? Are we just here as a business, or are we going to compete on the field? Are we going to compete for trophies every season? Are we going to win trophies? I feel some sympathy for Postecoglou at Spurs. He's had to face a lot of, I think, really crappy questions in the media, in regards to his own background, the growth of the game globally, what true fans are. He's one of the few footballing people who talks sense week in, week out. When it comes, he doesn't take. He takes responsibility, but I feel sorry for him because far too often the players have let him down. And seeing yet another heavy defeat, they've had a few of them this season, is hampering their chances of competing for trophies. It just happens far too often. They've obviously sold Harry Kane, which was inevitable considering the amount of money and the amount of debt that stadium cost. But yeah, 4-0 to Newcastle. When Newcastle are just playing out the string is not a good look when you're fighting for a European place. Spurs for me are a frustrating club as a neutral. I'm not a Spurs fan, but I work with a fair few Spurs fans. Spurs for me are an enigma. They really are. I haven't won a trophy since 2008. This is a club that sacked a serial winner in Jose Mourinho 6 days before a cup final, when he was the only manager at that point to have beaten Guardiola in a cup final, and then go on to lose said cup final. They've had no managerial stability. you could argue when they had, when they had Pochettino, they had a bit of stability in the dugout, but really they had a season and a half, 2-season window to win something. They didn't. They lost the worst Champions League final in history, which sent me to sleep, may I just add. And oh, Jesus Christ. So as I say, like, to me, they are an enigma. They've had some good players. They've had some great players over the years. They've developed some great players over the years. They've had a window to win, didn't take advantage of it, and they sold Harry Kane too late to maximise his value, to bring a good group of players in, or invest in the players there, a good core there, and invest in their youth system. They rebuilt the stadium for financial reasons, as in to make them more money as an ownership group, rather than get the football club to win. And the owners, I mean, crikey, is it Lewis? He's just been convicted. I mean, admittedly, he didn't get custodial, but he's been convicted of financial crimes. Yet apparently, he's still a fit and proper person to run a football club. And this is where I think the footballing authorities need to govern and audit clubs far more rigorously and transparently, and say you're no longer fit to be an owner. We need to find a replacement. You have to sell. So it's just, America is the most capitalist country, yet has the most socialist sporting system. We have a social welfare system and social democratic, a mixed economy over here in Europe, yet we have the most capitalist sporting system. It's weird. Such a weird thing. So funny though, but it's so weird. Like, could not make it up. But no, for me, I do think that football governance and the ownership models we have, it's the lack of transparency and lack of accountability, in my opinion, in regards to football ownership, club finances, governance of the sport. There's a real lack of accountability. There's a lack of transparency. And I reading the other day of how much money Premier League clubs have spent on agents' fees in the last 12 months. Ridiculous. And the amount of money Chelsea alone have spent, absolutely staggering. That Chelsea have spent that much money, not only on transfer fees, which could also get higher, with Caicedo could reach 115 million if all the add-ons and extras get ticked off. But the amount of money they spent on agents' fees, I mean, that needs to be looked at as well. The role of agents within the game, the lack of transparency. They are a very poorly regulated group of people. But I'm not saying all sports agents are bad people. There are some great sports agencies that have a lot of agents working for them who represent a lot of athletes and a lot of sports internationally. But football agents, in this instance, although you could say the same for the AFL and NRL in Australia with their player agents as well, a lot of them aren't particularly. They're very sleazy individuals. Let's be honest. There's enough of them that have a negative reputation that we have to ask questions of the transparency and integrity. And then look what we've seen in Major League Baseball. So Todd Boehly owns Chelsea. He also owns the LA Dodgers, right? They've just signed Shohei Ohtani to the most lucrative sports contract of all time. He's actually worth more than some pro sports teams now for his salary, right? There's been this betting scandal that brings into question the integrity of the Dodgers organization with their background checks on their staff, the integrity of the league, raises questions about betting rules, and there were checks and balances in regards to the governance of pro sports in North America. Obviously, we've seen this rise in gambling firms and sports betting firms, especially sponsoring professional sports. We're used to it over here in Europe. Obviously, we've had the betting shop industry has been around for 50, 60 years now since it was legalized again. But online gambling, specifically sports betting, in regards to the sponsorship aspects of non-traditional sports, basically in the sense of sports betting companies and gambling firms having sponsorship. Yeah, snooker, horse racing, and the greyhounds historically that's the sports that will take the sponsorship money from gambling firms. But now it's everything. It's everything. Every major sport now has at least one gambling firm will appear on an advert as a sponsor. It's starting to become a problem. Motorsport seems to be less reliant on gambling money, but even there, you're now starting to see gambling firms getting their brand and or their brands or their company logos on in motorsport. Now it's starting to become a thing, and they're starting to work their way into that sponsorship market, which is a completely different beast. Is motorsport completely different? But they're starting to work their way into the motorsport economy. Not on the same level as football, rugby league, snooker, even rugby union. Now there's betting sponsorship. Not on the same level, but it's definitely got to a point now where we're at a tipping point. The US is 20, 30 years behind the rest of the world. We've had these discussions about the amount of TV ads, the amount of radio. We're not going to work in the morning. We're talking like 4:30 in the morning. There's radio ads talking about which are gambling firms. Bet365 is one of the companies where there's a radio ad, and you're listening to that at 3:30, 4:30 in the morning, and you're thinking, really? Is that's a thing? So, depending on if let's say I watch, I've watched 3 rugby league games in the NRL this morning. Obviously, they're evening Australian time, and I bet you, because this is a sports channel, I bet you the first YouTube video I watch, and if it's sport related, but there'll be at least one gambling ad will pop up in the first hour. I'm on YouTube. If it's a sports related video, there'll be a gambling ad. I have no doubt, absolutely no doubt in my mind. And a lot of them are unskippable. And they will always use celebrities and well-known individuals in their advertising campaigns. Ray Winston's obviously a famous prime example with Bet365, although depending on where you are in the world, will depend on the well-known individual they use. In Australia, they use a different actor, but with pretty much the same script. We've seen a lot of well-known ex-sportsmen and women also be part of advertising campaigns for betting firms. And so when you have that household name and it's constantly a recurring theme with their part of this advertising campaign, it's a big thing. It's how, that's how advertisers will go, we can hit our target audience. We're aiming it at this age demographic or this social demographic. We'll use this guy because he connects really well with that particular target audience. And we are starting to see a rise in gambling addiction and gambling related crimes. And we're seeing a rise in the number of professional athletes involved in betting scandals and getting banned. We are. It's a no-brainer. There's got to be a correlation. There has to be a correlation, surely. I don't know where we go from here in regards to. I'm not saying gambling needs to be made illegal. We know prohibition doesn't work. Look at the 1994 Arizona State University basketball point shaving scandal, for example. But so far this season, the NBA has been alerted by the gambling authorities. So, and the gambling companies, the legal ones, have the red flag system. They go, there's some suspicious betting patterns here, which we haven't seen before. And there's suddenly a big interest on this player missing 4 rebounds in the NBL, getting three pointers in the third quarter. He's done that. We're seeing some suspicious betting patterns here. We're raising some concerns. We're going to investigate this particular game and these betting patterns and the individuals placing those bets. And then there's a handful of games already this season that have been highlighted. We saw before the COVID pandemic, an ice hockey game in Sweden got cancelled less than an hour before face-off because of irregular betting patterns. So this isn't just a US thing suddenly where they're finding out the hard way in regards to the gambling and sports gambling. It's been happening for a long time. Anyway, I'm going to call that a day on this little impromptu afternoon live stream. Grand National starts in less than an hour. We've got the Women's Six Nations taking place right now. So I'm going to call that a day. There'll probably be more content this evening, and we'll keep an eye open on what's going on with the South Sydney organisation in the NRL. We'll keep an eye on what's happening with the Arizona Coyotes situation, because that just seems to be evolving every hour at this point. The fact that last night the players had a meeting with ownership in regards to being told we're relocating, we're having a tour of the new facilities. As soon as the last game is played, that's us done. It does say to me, though, that this has been known about for a while, and that meetings have been held for quite some time in the relocation process. I don't think this is as knee-jerk and as reactionary as it was in 2011 with Atlanta, but there we go. But we'll keep an eye on that. And I think, we will resume the Football Club History series as well. But I will also be doing an NRL roundup and discussing my thoughts on the NRL season after 6 rounds as soon as all the games are completed tomorrow. And that'll be really, really interesting. So I've been really happily and pleasantly surprised with the quality of play that I've seen, the intensity and the speed of the game. It's almost like watching an Origin match every single game. How much longer the players can sustain that, God only knows. So if you want to get a question in before I go, I'll give you about another 5 minutes. So if you want any more questions, just get them in quickly, because I'm going to wind this stream down now. But so, yeah, some video update ideas. We'll, I think, do a few more club history videos at some point. And as the football season ends and we get into the summer before the Euros, no, I don't gamble anymore on sport. I used to put some bets on the Grand National, but not anymore. When you've got up to 40 runners, you've got you've got a very small chance of it coming off. And I lost the enjoyment of it all, really, if I'm being honest. But I've decided, I do my Euro Millions and my National Lottery tickets every now and then, and I occasionally get a scratch card, because I know that the money that I'm spending there, a huge proportion of that does actually go to good charitable causes, and some of those National Lottery funded causes that I, as a person, have benefited from at various points. But no, I don't do sports gambling anymore. And considering the discussion we've had surrounding sports gambling with what Major League Baseball and the NBA in recent days, with what's going on in those leagues in North America, and what we've seen, obviously, with Ivan Toney, Daniel Sturridge a few years ago, Michael Chopra back in the day, Joey Barton back in the day, Tonali this season, and his former Juventus teammates, what we've seen, snooker, for example, what we've seen in recent years, and more recently, obviously, with Ivan Toney as an example, has really made, okay, whoa, this is a problem. Plus, one of my cousins did have a gambling problem, had a bit of a gambling problem, and was spending far too much money gambling back in the day, and it did have an impact. Did cause some big problems for him and my extended family just over a decade ago, and that started to change my mind on going down the bookmakers the bookies, down the betting shops. So I decided that's me. That's me done now. I've had a fair run with winnings on the old horses back in the day, but I just start to see more and more. I've had a few friends slip into gambling addiction as well, some real close friends, and it did get to a point where I'm like, intervention time. You're spending far too much money. Like one of my friends used to go on the old fruit machines in the pub, and he would come in with 50 quid, buy 2 pints, which would have been about a fiver at the time, something like that, and put 40, 50 quid in the fruity. He might win his money back. He might actually win. And then you go, well, that's me done for the night. And that's great. Okay, cool, you're up 50 quid or whatever, however much, 25 quid, 30. And then other nights he would get his paycheck. And we're talking a wodge. And he would spend half his paycheck within a handful of minutes on the fruit machine. And then we might be down the pub for 6-7 hours on a Friday evening. So a day like this, nice day, we might meet up after lunch, early evening, and just socialise with our mates down the pub. Within the first hour, he's already spent all his money on the fruit machine, lost it all, and he's asking me for a spare fiver or a spare tenner. And every now and then you go, oh, here you go. You've had a bit of fun. All right. Get yourself a drink, whatever. You can win your money back. Once in a blue moon, I was happy to do that, but then it was becoming every Friday. It was becoming a recurring theme. Oh, have you got any money for the fruity? It's like, well, you get paid weekly. Where's all your money gone? And it just got recurring. He spent some time in Australia working. He came back, and it was again recurring. So he obviously had issues over in Australia as well with the with the pokies, as they call them over there. We call them the fruities. They call them pokies. And that was his problem. And eventually I said, no, mate, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not lending you money because I never see it. He owes me hundreds, if not thousands of pounds. And so that started putting me off. And then, I've had other less close friends have gambling problems, and a cousin with a gambling issue. And it started to be like, this is a problem. So I just took myself out of that environment completely. And then, obviously, about the same time, I had my own addiction issues and had to go to meetings. And when you have like the group meetings of just Addicts Anonymous, you can have any addiction. And there were a couple of people in there who had struggled with the gambling. And then because the gambling was becoming a problem and depression set in, drug and alcohol use goes hand in hand. And so that was an eye-opener. I'm gonna say about 7 years ago, something like that. That was a big eye opener at the time, 7-8 years ago, and yes, it's not my thing. I've really taken. It's like the same with drinking. I don't drink anymore, and so which was a big problem I had as well. Now I don't miss the pub because the alcohol temptation's not there. The fruit machine temptation's not there either. And I was quite good on the fruities as well, which was quite surprising. I could hit a jackpot on 3 separate fruit machines and go in with a tenner and come out with like £400 or £500. But I took myself away from that temptation. It'd be nice to win £300-400 right now, because that would, that would get me through the rest of the month and into next month easy. But it's just not worth chasing yourself, and then you just get into this revolving cycle of you have to win. It's now or bust. And when you've got an addictive personality, that's dangerous. And when you are struggling with whatever it's struggling, it just becomes a revolving cycle and a spiral, and it's horrible. And so I just took myself out of the situation. So that's why I don't gamble. But I don't think it should be necessarily banned, but I do think we need to have more support and better regulation in regards to advert timings, the amount of ad per day, the amount of ads involving a sports broadcast sponsorship. And I think we are going down that route. America's 30 years behind us. Unfortunately, the technology, has grown quicker, and the industry's just developed new techniques to hook you. And so the US is going to be grappling with a situation which is far worse now than what it was 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. So There's that. Yeah, 2 horses died, but it's like the Isle of Man TT. Every year, at least 1 or 2 riders die on average. Sometimes average is about 3 to 4. Worst, the Isle of Man TT. There was one year a few years ago. There was a record like 11 or 12 participants died. There was another year when 9 died, and every year they go, we got a ban TT. Sod off with that. It is the risk element. It is the risk element. I mean, riders have died doing the Grand National over its history, and just horse racing in general. It is the risk element, and it is it's like sort of man and beast versus nature, and in the TT's case, it's man and machine versus the road, and the terrain. There's a reason why these events are so bloody popular. It is the risk element. It's the same with the contact team sports like rugby league and ice hockey. We are at risk of massively altering what these sports are by being too reactionary with rule changes. So, and they're talking about, like, banning the kickoff in rugby league. Sod off. It's part of the game. That first hit up with the big front row forward going at the other front row forwards and having that physical contest is part of the game. So these nut job protesters, they're going to be very, very brave, pissing off a load of drunk scousers, because they're not going to get out of there in one piece, I tell you. And with what happened yesterday with the violent, the violent scenes and people getting arrested for having a big punch up, there were some distasteful scenes. Crikey, if they're fighting each other, they're probably going to batter the left wing animal rights activists. They're not getting out of there alive. It would be like a Man United, Liverpool turning up to a Man United protest outside Old Trafford and giving it the big one. They're not getting out of Greater Manchester in one piece. It's the same if Man United and Man City fans were protesting outside Goodison, or turning up while the Everton fans are protesting as their club and going, "Oh, we're going to rub it in because we're in a better financial situation than you." There's ways and means of picking your battles and better ways of doing things, and I think the way they've said that they're not going to try and disrupt. They're just going to do their protest, but they can't guarantee that there'll be others there who won't listen and will try and disrupt. So they've left themselves open to interpretation. But with the way things are going in regards to public acts of disorder, it is what it is. But anyway, look, thanks very much for those quick, brief questions. I'm going to call that a stream. There may be some more content this evening. There's always a lot to discuss. Club History series will continue over the coming weeks and months. And of course, I'll do my Rugby League NRL Round 6. I wouldn't say review, but my thoughts on where we are with the NRL after 6 rounds, because it's been a really fun opening month and a bit so far. The intensity level that games been played at is ridiculous. Not gonna lie, absolutely ridiculous. The intensity level with the games are being played at, Origin-esque. Can't see how these teams can keep up that intensity. Just fantastic the commitment the teams have put in. But there we go. So I'm going to call that a day. Thank you very much for all the questions. The Grand Nationals just under 40 odd minutes away, just over. And we've got the Women's Six Nations in progress right now, England, Scotland. So I'm having a toss-up. Do I watch the Grand National? Do I watch the Women's Six Nations? Bit of a toss-up. There's some interesting sport taking place right now. But for now, thank you very much for watching. And I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.